Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time it is that you are tuning into this. Hi, my name is Lindsay Smith. I am a partner success manager, client education manager, whatever title you want to call me. And this is Get Supered 101. Purpose of this camp, call, webinar, whatever you want to call it, is to go through the basics of Supered so that you are comfortable where everything is located within Supered and how to start getting into creating your cards, your content, delivering to your team, to your clients, and enabling Supered where you want it. Couple of housekeeping items as we wait for people to trickle in. The platform that we use is called Get. I'm gonna start that sentence over. It's the week before a holiday break. Be gentle. Anyway, the platform that we use is called Contrast, getcontrast.io. They are a fantastic partner to work with if you are in the market for a webinar platform. A note on how their chat works. There's about a 10-second delay from what the audience chat puts in, so what you can see on your side versus when it comes over to me. So about 10 seconds in there. So as I go through, I absolutely encourage questions. Please ask questions as they come up. You don't need to save them for the end if you don't want to. But just know that if I don't see it immediately, it's probably because it hasn't popped up on my side yet. So I just haven't seen it yet, but don't worry, I will see it and we'll get them answered on the call. Other housekeeping items, Supered is taking a holiday break. I think it aligns with most other people's holiday breaks where it will be next week and the week after where there will be limited response times, but there will still be monitoring of our intercom, which is our in-app chat, which we'll show you as we dive into this. So if you do have questions as you're going, if you are one of those people that's working over the holiday break, there will still be support. Just know that there will be just a little bit of a delay than usual, than typical, right? Okay. And usually I have a card with like things I need to announce, but I didn't do that today because the struggle is real, y'all. Very last is this is a little bit interactive. So pull up your Supered accounts, follow along with me. If you fall into the camp of the Supered curious, those are my friends that maybe you saw this link on LinkedIn and you're like, what is all of this pink about? I need to know what's going on. And you haven't signed up for an account yet. It is free to sign up. So go ahead, sign up. You will have access to almost all of the assets that we talk about today. So definitely go ahead, log in, sign up. If there are features that we do talk about that you don't have access to, that you would like access to, definitely let us know. We're always happy to talk you through how to become a Supered partner and unlock the access that we talk about. Okay, cool. All right, let's share my screen and get into it. All right, so this is Supered, right? Very first and foremost, when you log into Supered, you get a home screen. This home screen is fully customizable. When you go to edit home, you can add in content panels, you can add in feature content, embedded forms. I'm not going to read that whole list to you. You can read, right? So the cool thing with the homepage as you are going through and customizing it is being able to put certain items that you want your team to focus on when they log in, right? So you can put in like a lucid chart, right? Where it has the plan for whatever quarter you're in. You can put in featured cards. So if you have specific content that you've created that you want your team to focus on, you can put in the featured card there. You can also put in like community and events that you're hosting that you want your team to be promoting. Or if you're a Supered partner, each and every client account that you create has a homepage that you can customize as well. So if you have specific things that you want your clients to know, like working with you, kind of the rules around that, you're able to put in like a community and events board. You can also put in embedded forms. So if there is a specific way that you want your clients to reach out to you to submit a ticket, something like that, you can embed that form onto the Supered homepage and they have access to it. Next down, we've got tasks. Also, this is the part of the call that I kind of like to, it's like tour guide Barbie. So we're going to take a tour, right? One of the greatest characters. I'm not going to lie. It's one of the best Disney characters, and she's so underrated. Under that, we've got tasks. Tasks are a part of action plans. Action plans are the newest Supered asset, and we will be hosting their own camp in 2025. So keep an eye out on our LinkedIns for information on that if that is something that you want to dive deeper into. as a partner as a Supered user. Action plans are ways that you can assign specific tasks as well as specific journeys for people as they are going through. The best example that I have that I usually fall back on is onboarding, right? So if you're onboarding someone, there's specific phases, specific tasks that they need to complete. That's where an action plan can really come in handy. Going into updates, updates are ways that you can push in-page announcements anywhere that you have Supered active and working. And when you have announcements that you want to send to your team, or if you're turning on an automation, you want to give your clients a heads up, anything like that, you can push an in-page announcement that pops up kind of like a pop-up little iframe in the middle of the screen, gives all of that information. Processes are our process rules. Process rules are unique to Supered. They are the only Supered asset that does require to be connected to the HubSpot account that you want them to show up in. That's as deep as I'm going into process rules for this camp. We have an entirely separate, dedicated, I say camp a lot, but you know, course, class, webinar, you know, choose your own adventure. Dedicated to process rules, how to create them, diving deep into them, kind of where to go. So that's what processes are. Analytics are for data nerds. We love a data nerd. This just gives you that bird's eye level view of how Supered is being used. If you have people logging in, how often cards are being used, how often they're being searched or embedded. I really like the search analytics because it does give you the search term and how many results it gets, and if there are missed searches. So that helps to kind of help you craft and mold your content to what your client or what your team is searching for. You can create cards and content that have those search terms, because sometimes they'll search something and it doesn't pull up a card, but what they're searching isn't exactly what the card is like says, but you know, it's the same thing, different fonts, right? So you can really help mold it and craft it. It also gives you utilization analytics, which is for the Supered app in general. It will tell you who's accepted their invitation, who's downloaded the extension, which is Sidekick, and if they're engaged with the app. And guide analytics are for the Supered asset guides. Helps you kind of see ones that are being finished. If they get started and not finished, you can kind of check in on the actual setup. If maybe it's too long, they just sort of lose focus in the middle, they stop doing it, or maybe something's broken, not working. It just helps give you that bird's eye level view. Right underneath analytics, if you are a Supered partner, you'll have this tab. If you're not a Supered partner, or you don't have the package manager or admin permissions, you probably don't have this tab either. What this is a partner only feature, and packages are also another asset that we have a camp for, right? Every Thursday we run Package Builder, which we talk about best practices in building packages, adding HubSpot resources into them, as well as delivering best practices. So the thing that I want you to walk away from this 101 though about packages is just sort of the idea of what a package is, right? So the analogy, I think it's an analogy. I don't know if that's the right English word. Also, I say that like English isn't my first language, but you know, English is one of those languages where like the points are the rules are made up and the points don't matter. So I don't know if analogy is the right English word for it. But my analogy is that packages are your delivery mechanism. That's all they are. That it's the way that you can get your content to a client is via a package. And then for my Supered partners, you have access to this partner tab, and it houses your managed accounts. It allows you to manage packages, which again, we go through every Thursday. Your billing screen is housed here, as well as your Supered Studio, and Supered Studio houses things such as like our knowledge base, just a direct link to the knowledge base that you can pop into, as well as a place where you can submit product ideas. So as you are going through and using Supered, getting familiar with it, if there's something that it doesn't do yet that you think would be fantastic for it to do, you can submit your idea, and that goes straight to our engineering team, and they will scope the idea and quite possibly build it. You can also upvote other people's ideas. If you see it and you're like, this is a fantastic idea, I would like to see this as well, you can upvote it. Okay, let's go into bases. So a couple of ways that you can go to create a base. But before we do that, before I go there, let's talk about what a base is. Bases are housing for your content. And what is your content? Your content is literally anything that you deliver to your clients or your team, right? Which that feels like a massive statement, right? But if we dive deeper into it, we kind of pick it apart a little bit. What your content can be is if you have an SOP for how to do something. If you've got very specific steps that you would like to take for you have a process that has very specific steps. I like to use like the financial industry for this example. So there are steps, within investing that you have to do, like you have to pass your KYC, your AML, all of these steps, right? You can put all of those processes into a Supered card and embed it where your team is working so they don't have to continue to search for answers. They just have that process right there, right? So every industry, every niche has steps. They've all got, SOPs that they follow. You can also put like a client's SOW in it. And I know it sounds like a lot of alphabet soup, but business lingo is always always letters, right? Things like that. If you have frequently asked questions, if you've got just hot tips that you want to give to a client or a team of the best way to interact with something like with a web-based app or on HubSpot, anything like that. So let's pop into bases. So you can create a base two ways. You can hit this plus button right here when you hover your mouse over it, or you can click on bases. I like to click on bases to talk a little bit more about this screen because it's kind of like a little hidden gem. A lot of my partners didn't know that you could click on the word bases and it would take you here. If you are newer in Supered, your screen's going to look different than mine. Your screen will probably have like a Supered base, like a box, like a little card box up in here somewhere, and it does not have the list view. The list view shows up when you have 3 or more bases in there. So your first 2 will just have those cards and then it'll give you the list. And then obviously your list is alphabetical. It's alphanumerical. So as you're going through and thinking about naming conventions for bases, definitely keep that in mind. It is alphanumerical. So if you have a specific naming convention you want to use, definitely kind of keep that in mind of how this gets organized. But bringing up naming conventions, see what I did there? We love a segue. Naming conventions that I've seen work for other partners, for Supered partners specifically, is if they want to create bases for specific clients, right? You can name it via the client name and put all their content into that base and put the base into a package to deliver to them. Or you can base your bases off of like the platform that you are creating content for. So if you are creating content for HubSpot, you have your tooltips, you have your definitions, you've got your FAQs, all of that kind of content. You can put that into a HubSpot base and then be able to deliver that to all of your clients that you are setting up HubSpot for. And so on and so forth, right? You get the picture. So those are a couple of the ways that I've seen that work really well for our most successful partners when they are approaching and naming bases. But let's create a base together. So I'm going to go here. Or again, you can hover over the word base and a little plus sign and it takes you to the same spot, right? So if I do that, same spot. We can name our base name. I am the least clever person when it comes to naming anything. So mine are always the name of my camp and then the date. If you have a use case that you kind of want to start exploring, I highly recommend diving into that and following along with me. And you always have the option to delete everything out if it turns out being something you don't want. But I suggest diving into your use case. So if there is content that you want to deliver and create immediately for a client, that is what I would suggest, or for your team, right? So I would suggest that. If you just want to do a test or like get Supered 101, have a nice like safe little sandbox to create things in and test them out before you put them anywhere that could be client or team facing, you can do that as well. So I'm going to name it Get Supered 101 for the date. You can also add an additional description to give a little bit more context of what's housed in the base if you want to. It's not required. Let's talk about these 2 things right here. So hide content in Chrome extension. Hidden bases won't appear in Sidekick, or like if you have trigger embeds, which we'll cover how to create, what they look like, all of that. When you hit hide content in Chrome extension, it pulls that all out. This is very useful for super partners specifically. If you're creating content for multiple clients, you don't want to see every single base you've ever created with every single embed, or you know that you'll be using similar trigger phrases for the content and you only want to see the one that you are working in. I would suggest you hide content in Chrome extension and work only from your active one, right? Also for our super users, it's useful if you have like a getting started base, you don't need to see it anymore. You can hide the content. Your team still has access to it when they log into Supered, but it won't show up in Sidekick, or embeds won't show up as they're working, right? Archived is something that is for every scarred student that has ever lost a paper overnight because they did not save it or they deleted it before they turned it in. I might be talking about me. Anyway, archived is a way that you can pull all content out and hide it in the base list. So this is for my people that are like, okay, but what if I need it? Like I created it, what if I need it? At some point you can archive it, and that will pull it from Sidekick, pulls out the embeds, and it hides it from your base list. So it keeps things clean, but you still have your content that you created within that base. And then access control. Access control is a great way to control who can access the content within the base. So if you're creating oh my gosh, how many times can I say base in a sentence? If you're creating content that is team specific and possibly sensitive that you don't need everybody on your team to be able to see. So for example, Supered has a leadership base that only the members of our leadership team have access to. They have put access controls on that base. So like myself or my other team members can't see it, but everybody on our leadership can. And then I would be remiss if I didn't touch on applications. Right now, this is kind of like a backburnered project. You can select an application to prioritize the content in the sidebar for HubSpot specifically, but by no means are you required. And right now it only has HubSpot, right? So stay tuned for more updates on that, possibly in 25. I'm not sure. Okay, now let's hit create. And if it doesn't show up immediately in your list, don't worry. All you have to do is refresh it. And there it is. Let's pop into it. Okay. Also, does 2025 sound like a fake year to anybody else? Sounds fake to me. Okay. Within your base, as you are diving into it to create content, a good way to start thinking about them is kind of like your Google folder structure, right? Or your computer folder structure. You can nest folders within a base. So the base name itself is like your master folder. That's what I would suggest you start thinking of it as. And then you can nest folders within it to keep even more organized. So if I just call this, we're just gonna call it 1217, because again, I'm not great at naming things. Does not bode well if I ever get another dog or something. This poor thing. It's gonna have like, his name is gonna be Demo or something. You can create a folder. And then if you want to create your content directly within that folder you just created, it gives you this little smaller plus sign. You can create a card. Other types of content that your base can house, we've got cards, we've got guides, and we've got action plans. Again, action plans will have their own camp starting in Q1 of 2025. And we'll go deeper into creating them, what they look like, how to navigate them. If you have started with Supered in the past month, you have been given an action plan. You can create folders within folders. I don't know if there's a limit, Jesse. I don't think there's a limit, but you can create folders within folders within folders. You can have a whole Russian nesting doll situation. But yeah, so if you are new to Supered within the last 3 weeks, you have been assigned an action plan. So that is how you've been onboarding, and it's been, an additional training tool that you have access to. So you kind of know how they work, right? But let's create a card, and then we'll talk about guides once we create cards. Create a card. The way that cards are structured should feel really familiar, should feel like every word processor you've ever used, right? So again, I'm sorry, the names. It's just not where my creativity shines. And you can put in rich text. So if you have, like I mentioned, SOPs, SOWs, FAQs, that alphabet soup, right? You can copy paste it into here. But where cards get really powerful, where they really become invaluable to your team and to your clients is when you can embed other content into them. So if you do a backslash, it gives you a bunch of keyboard commands. What I want to talk about is our advanced ones down here in our media. So you can put in images, you can put in videos. So if you've got Looms or Vidyards, YouTube videos, anything like that, you can embed them into a card and then put them where your team is working as they're working. They don't need to go search in Loom for something. They don't need to go search in a dusty Google Drive for content that may or may not exist still. So, we've all been there, right? You can embed audio. So if you have a verbal walkthrough that you need to give someone, you can do that. And then back to talking about your SOWs, your SOPs, whatever, you can insert the PDF as well. So you don't need to copy paste if you don't want to. You can just insert the PDF and it will be ready to go. But I don't have a Loom ready to go through that. Tuesdays. It's getting me. It's Tuesday before a holiday break, you guys. Oh my gosh. So we'll just put in that this is a test card and we'll create. So the very first place that your cards will live before you add in any kind of a trigger to embed it somewhere is within Sidekick itself. So if I came in here and pulled up my Sidekick, I don't know, my package builder is up. That was interesting. And I look up test, it pulls up every card that has the word test in it. So back to when we were talking about analytics, this is the search results, right? It will pull up that there was probably 40, 50, 60, however many. There's a lot of cards that it just pulled up. But there's that one that we just created together. So when you search within Sidekick, it will search both the body of the card and for the titles. So that's the very first place that a card will live. The second place that cards live is by embedding it. You've heard me say a couple of times now, deliver your content to your team where they're working as they're working. So what exactly do I mean by that? If we're looking at this test deal within HubSpot, what I mean by delivering your content to your team as they're working, I am working on this deal in HubSpot. I need to have, something explained to me. So say it's within, my organization works on MEDPIC. I need to know what metrics means. Here is a card that's been embedded, this content from my organization defining exactly what metrics are so that I can see it as I'm working. I don't need to pop back over into Supered. I don't have to pull open Sidekick and search for it. It's been embedded directly where I'm working. So how do we get here? You choose a word or phrase that you want it to embed upon. So let's use create date as our example. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it. I do copy paste a lot for trigger embeds just because sometimes when I'm typing, my spelling gets horrendous. So it's just easier. And to create a trigger, you come into the card, you hit triggers, create trigger. And the very first one that it will pull up for you is the title of the card. So if you're creating cards that are defining say a life cycle stage, that's where it kind of gets useful as you title it the same name. But I'm gonna get rid of that. We're gonna paste in, create date. Things to note on triggers is they are not case sensitive. So you don't need to worry about the cases. Oh gosh, you guys, all of my words are trying to come out all at the same time. It is space sensitive, however. So if you are creating a trigger and everything is spelled right, you have Supered active on that page and it is still not showing up, double check that you don't have any extra spaces like between or at the end or before it. That's caught me a few times. It's also emoji sensitive. So if you have emojis within the phrase, you need to include the emoji in this as well. You can change the icon of the trigger. So you can, the bolt is the default. So you can use the bolt, or we've got our standard ones, plus, fire, star, info, chevron, right? Those are our standard ones. So a powerful way to do that is kind of to decide what you want them to mean internally, and then kind of stick to that legend, right? have your star sign be like things that you want them to pay attention to, or bolts are if something is involved in an automation, things like that. If you're a white label partner of ours, you are able to create custom icons. So, you know, thinking through like delivering to clients, if you use your logo as a trigger embed, they see your logo everywhere. You're first in their mind. You stay very sticky in their account. Let's go to star. Let's do a star. And then visibility. Visibility is if you want to bring down triggers to specific teams. However, for your clients, this does require a paid super seat. So they would need to be on Scalar Pro in order for you to bring down visibility for them. Internally, you are able to do that with your Supered account. So if you have like a specific things for like your sales team that you don't need your client success team to see, you can do that here. But we're going to leave it for everybody so everyone can see it. What is the best practice for when you invite clients to Supered, not until it's built out or as you're building? Great question. What I like to say is my best practice for it is kind of in between those two extremes, right? I think that there is power in inviting your clients into Supered as you're building it, because then you can really craft it to their experience. They can give you live feedback on what they're liking, what they're hating, and you can really just mold it to them so that they feel like they have that white glove experience while you're still just building out their Supered, right? So that's what I like to suggest as the best practice, and kind of what my most successful partners have done in the past is kind of they get it set up, but not fully, and then they'll invite in so that they can get that feedback. All right, now that we have our trigger created, we're going to come back over into HubSpot, and I'm going to refresh my page, let it load. And there is our trigger. There is that card that we just created. So, you know, as this example here is showing you, you can do definitions for embeds. You can do like best practices for your embeds, things like that. Something that I like to note on triggers is this will look for create date everywhere I have Supered active. So if create date showed up like in LinkedIn, it would show this embed. So it's something to think through as you are creating them. And a word of caution on triggers, especially if you're doing them in HubSpot, there are very common words in HubSpot. Contacts is the one that I like to highlight because it is typically in every HubSpot URL, right? Just about. Don't use contact as a trigger. It will either show everywhere or it will show nowhere. There's no in between. So that is one word I would avoid. Okay. So when you are creating cards, creating content, you are not tied to only creating it within the back, I like to call this the back end of Supered. You can create them from the extension from Sidekick itself. So you're in the flow of work, you're doing something, you're creating something, you're building something. You're like, you know what? It would be a really good idea if I had a card to kind of describe what I'm doing here, how client A should be interacting with this CRM, with whatever you're building for them. You can create a card from Sidekick itself. By coming into Sidekick and hitting this little plus button, it gives you the option to create a card, and it pulls up the card editor. And it has the full power of the editor from the back end. You can also create your embedded trigger from here as well. So again, you're in the flow of work, you've created something, you're like, I need to define this. You can go to Sidekick, pull it open, create that card immediately. And then there's a third way to create cards. You can highlight, right click it. Just about every Chrome extension, when you right click in that menu, it will have your Chrome extensions kind of about in the middle of that pop-up screen. I cannot figure out the share so that you can see pop-ups. So I'm sorry about that for this one. I'll learn. I'll figure it out. Might be a 25 thing. And so you have Sidekick within those Chrome extension section, and you can create a card from that. So when I hit create card, it will pull this up with create date as the title. So 3 ways you can create cards: back end with the plus sign on Sidekick, and right click, highlighting, right clicking. Okay, cool. Let's talk about guides. What are guides? Guides are step-by-step instruction. So if you have a process that is very easily defined by step-by-step instruction, right? So I like to highlight things like connecting your email, connecting your calendar, specifically within HubSpot. I do use HubSpot a lot because HubSpot is my first love. And Super does love our HubSpot partners. So, things like that you explain to your clients a lot, like how they can connect their calendars, how they can connect their emails. Just, very simple how-tos. You can create guides for it. So if I come back into the base that we created, I can record my guide. What this is going to do is it's going to pop open a window of all of the browser windows that I have open. So I want to go to the one that I want to record this process on. And it will pop me into it, right? And it will also open up Sidekick. And in Sidekick, we see that we have our step counter, right? So if I am creating a step-by-step guide of how to update a field, very simple things that maybe you don't think that you need to explain, but you can ask how to do it. You can come in here. So, we'll give this a couple of steps as we go through. You'll see that screenshots are snagged with where the mouse was, and it gives us like our explanation. And so my computer screen is like right in front of that save button, so I'm just like trying to see it. We'll give it a few steps here. The guide controls down here. What do these mean? So this is how many steps it's recorded. This is if you're done, you can complete it. We've got pause. So the pause button is useful if you need to move to another screen while your guide is recording, and that screen includes something like you need to log in to something. You don't want the guide recording the keystrokes. You can pause it so you can put in your password, your username, and then resume it so that it then continues to follow the process. And then we also have the cancel. So if you, started one, you're like, never mind, I don't actually need to do this, or you forgot that it's recording, which I've definitely done, and it records like 500 steps. You can just cancel it out. But we are going to complete this guy. And in here, it gives you controls of where you want to put it. So if you started creating your guide and you're like, actually, this should go into this other base. So, maybe I don't want it in this Get Supered 101 base from today. I will actually want it to go into my guides base. I can put it there if I want to. And it also lets me choose if I want to put it into a folder or no folder structure. We're going to name it. And again, you guessed it, it's going to be today's date. And we'll create the guide. Once the guide is created, it will pop you back over into Supered so that you are able to get to the editing tools for the guide itself. So we do give you a little bit of control of how your guide presents. So for our text-based ones, you can edit and you can change the step title as well as the URL if you want to. But if you try to delete it out, it cannot be blank. It will default back to that original URL. You can also delete a step. How do I view update history for cards and guides? That's on my wish list for Santa Steve, is version history for when people update a card or a guide. So right now we don't have that, but it is on my list for Santa Steve. So if you do want, if you want that, you want to help my case too. In the bottom right-hand corner is the chat bubble. That goes directly to our engineers, and you can submit that request there as well. Within the edit tools, you can delete a step out if you want to. So if you have superfluous steps in there and you're like, this just says the same thing over and over again, I don't need it, you can delete that step out. When it comes to the screenshots, it gives you the option to zoom in. If you want to zoom in, that uses your mouse or your trackpad. You can also update where the mouse is. That's interesting that it wasn't showing. Oh, because it's below. Interesting. I learn things all the time. So you can control where the mouse, that cursor is. You can redact information too. So if you are recording a guide like on your main account in HubSpot, you have client information that you don't need to share with everybody. You are able to hit the redact and pull out that information so they can't see it. Y'all are seeing this, right? I think I just found a bug. So this should save where I was at on that Zoom, and it didn't. And luckily this is recorded, so I can push this on over. But that is the basics of editing the guide. You can also move your steps up or down. The only limitation really that we have right now is you aren't able to insert a step yet. That is, it is there. Jesse, we're on the same page there. Yeah, like I mentioned, so if you want to add a step, like click on X button, but you don't want to actually click on it to add it into the guide, we don't have that capability quite yet. It has been requested. It is being scoped to get that sanded into, did I just say sanded? So like Matt Bullion has this phrase that we're in our sanding era for editing, like fixing some things, some UI things in Supered. So we're sanding the product. So that's, sometimes I open my mouth and Matt comes out. So yeah, we will have that capability. I don't have a specific timeline on it, but so right now we don't have a way to insert a step. Okay. Before I move on from guides, I do like to point out that you can put a guide onto a card so that you can embed it onto, you know, where your people are working as they're working. So if I came back, oh, yeah, I want to save that. If I came back to the card that we created and hit edit, and I go to a new line, and I'm going to / guide, I can embed that guide that we just created and select that guy, and it embeds it onto the card. So going back to the example of step-by-steps for stuff that you explain a lot, like stuff that is very regimented in how they do it, you can put it onto a card and then embed it onto, you know, where your team is working. So if I came back to that embed where we have it right here, we have our guide right here. They can interact with it from here, or you can hit view in sidebar, pops it open, so they can navigate through their guide as they are doing the process. Okay. And like cards, you can create a guide from the extension as well. It's right there. We're not going to do that because it's the same process. Okay. So from here, let's pop up to updates really quickly. So updates, I think, are criminally underused in Supered. I think they are quite useful in getting information across. Internally, the way that Supered uses them is, I think it's our engineer team that uses it the most. When they improve a feature, they have a new feature coming out that they want to send us our video walkthrough for so that we can see it and understand it. They will push an update to everywhere that we have Supered active so that the team sees it. Creating it is like creating anything else in Supered. You hit that create button up in the top right. You can give it a title. You can change who it's sent by. So if you want to send it from like a specific team, or, you know, if you're sending it on behalf of like your boss, you can change who it's sent by here. You can change to the display type. So the display type that I prefer is the pop-up model, which is like it's like an iframe in the middle of the screen. It's pop-up. We're all familiar with pop-ups. Or if you have something that's not quite as important, but you still want to push the update for it, we do have a banner. It's a lot quieter, shows at the bottom of the screen. And you can put in your information here. If you're a Supered partner and you want to push an update to your client accounts, to your managed accounts, so say your team is going on holiday and they won't be able to like respond very quickly, you can create an update and then push it to your client accounts. So you don't need to hop into each and every client account in order to create the update over and over again. You create it once and push it from your partner level. Audience, again, is like the triggers where you can bring it down to specific users. If you are trying to do this for your clients, if you're a Supered partner, you want to do it for your clients, it does require that your clients be on a paid Supered seat. So if they are on Scalar Pro, you can bring it down to audience specifically for them. You can choose how many days it's shown for. And then you can also select a launch date. So if you have something that you've thought of like on Friday, or it's the Friday before a holiday, and you want to push it out on Monday morning, you can choose the launch date, and you can restrict the domain and the path as well. So if it's something very specific. So if you're doing like maintenance on their HubSpot account, you can bring it down to just HubSpot, and they'll only see it on HubSpot. It won't show up everywhere else. Media is if you want to connect it to a card. So if there is like more information that you want to dive into that is a lot for just the body of the update, you can connect the card. You can also link it to an external URL. And then the media type is like at the top of the update, which we'll see in just a second. I have to give it some stuff though to give it the preview, which makes sense, right? You have to put something in it for it to be able to preview. So if I hit preview, this is what it would look like. Everywhere that I had Supered active, it would have this pop-up show up upon the reload of the page. It gives you options to snooze and complete or to exit out. And where that information is gathered is in analytics. So you can see who's seen it, who has completed it, who's snoozing it, all of that. I don't need to keep that. We're okay. Okay. So we've toured Supered. We have looked at bases. We've talked about best practices around bases and naming conventions. We've talked about creating content from Sidekick, creating updates, creating guides. Done a lot of stuff. Last thing that I want to talk about is configuring your Supered so that it shows where you want it to show up. To do that is within settings. So to get to settings, you can come to this little drop down caret here, or at the bottom of the left hand, the logo. So if you're a white label, this is probably your logo. Or if you're brand new in Supered, it will be the Supered logo. You can click on it. It will take you to the same spot, as well as coming to that drop down and hitting settings. Both take you to the same spot. In settings, you have users, which is where you would invite your team in. And then you can set your team groups. You can look at the permission sets. This is the breakdown of it. If you are one of our white label advanced partners, you are able to create your own permission sets. So that's something to look at if that is something you're interested in. And then extension. Extension is where you control where Supered is active. So Supered is a Chrome overlay. So if you want it to show up everywhere that your team is working, then you need to put in the extension that you want it to show up on. So internally, Supered literally has Supered active everywhere, obviously, of course. But like of note, we have it active like on our G Suite. So if we're in Google Drive for whatever reason, or we're working in our Gmails, our calendars, as well as like we have it live on LinkedIn, like literally pretty much anywhere that we have our team in there a lot, right? You just simply need to put in the URL and save it. This is also another section that you can get to billing. And then white labeling, if you're a white label partner, this is where you control that. You can start creating your themes, all of that. And your partner settings are housed in here as well. All right. So that's Supered. Questions, comments, concerns, hopes, dreams, plans to take over the world. My favorite thing is to end a call with plans to take over the world, because if you've ever read anything about programmed responses, humans, we're so used to saying, how are you doing? Oh, good. Even if we're not good, the world's falling apart and we're not good, but we'll still say good. So I like to throw out something that throws off that programmed response. Plans to take over the world gets a laugh every time, because you're not expecting to hear it. That was definitely 10 seconds of me vamping. If you do have further questions and you have not joined Super Jam, that is our online Slack community. I will drop the link to join, the invite link, in our chat here. Go ahead and join that. Our entire team's over there. We drop announcements over there. There's really good support from other partners that have been using Supered. It's a really great community, and it is free to join. So definitely join that. So if you have further questions, you can find me over there. You can DM me. It's a good time. Thank you so much for spending the last 45 minutes with me talking about one of my favorite subjects. And I don't just say that because I work here. I really do enjoy Supered. I know there's a lot of draw on time, especially at the end of the year. So I do appreciate you being here. The recording for this will be sent out by the end of the day. I think it's typically about an hour of when it comes out, but sometimes it does take a little bit longer. So expect that by the end of the day. And of course, as always, stay awesome, stay strong, and stay Supered. Bye, guys.